Then I think over a period of time, I realized when the number of countries I had visited was equal to my age, and I thought, okay, that's a nice coincidence. I can probably take it further. And a few years down the road, it was double my age. If you have the right mindset in terms of like no arrogance about where you come from,
Correct.
and act with humility, I don't think you will face much trouble.
I remember Paulo Coelho once quoted this that if you feel travel is dangerous, try routine. It's lethal.
In the book, I also draw a lot of linkages between my hometown in Pakistan, Dera Ismail Khan,
Mhm.
and parts of India and people who had migrated from there, from my hometown to India during partition.
I like that statement. Can you repeat that, please?
I would say to look at things with a mindset of abundance. Future has a lot more in store for us than what is visible to us today.
Hello and welcome everyone. This is Vivek Naik and you are watching Readers Official, a platform where authors from around the world speak beyond pages. Before I go ahead and welcome my today's guest, let me ask all of you to quickly subscribe this channel because that one small action of yours motivates me to bring best-selling authors on this platform and create a worldwide community of authors and readers. Now, let me introduce my today's guest. He is an author of a book called Coming Back, an Odyssey of a Pakistani through India. Not just that, he's an avid traveler who has traveled more than 118 countries around the world. Plus, he's a chartered accountant by profession, a painter by hobby. Not just that, a recipient of multiple international awards and a literary festival keynote speaker. Please welcome Mr. Shueyb Gandapur. Shoaib, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vivek. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you on this platform. Um, Shoaib, help us understand your journey from childhood back in Pakistan, then you exploring the whole world, and then writing this beautiful travel memoir. Tell us about this journey.
Sure. So I am from a place in Pakistan called Dera Ismail Khan. It's a small remote town. And that's where I was born. That's where I grew up. And that's where I spent most of my life until the age of 18. And then I moved to Islamabad, the capital of Pakistan, for higher studies. And I became a chartered accountant. My journey to travel the world started around the age of 25 when I had pretty much finished my education, and with connection with work, I started traveling. And so, like, coincidentally, this was the first place I came to from Pakistan, the UAE. My first assignment was in Abu Dhabi. That's why it holds still a special place in my heart because it was my first international destination. But growing up, traveling was not something I had thought about much, that I will one day be able to travel so much, because it looked like a very remote possibility and not something that that's in the realm of possibility in a middle class household. Like, you don't think of traveling the world. Your focus is more on like making your place in the world and getting financial security. But with work, I started traveling, and then I got the confidence that if I can travel for work, I can travel by myself as well for leisure or just to explore the world. That's how it started. And I had not thought about like how many countries I want to travel. It was just taking one destination at a time. And then I think over a period of time, I realized when the number of countries I had visited was equal to my age, and I thought, okay, that's a nice coincidence. I can probably take it further. And a few years down the road, it was double my age and the countries I had visited. And now, anytime I get an opportunity, I like to go somewhere new. I am traveling tonight as well, if the flight leaves on time.
True.
But yeah, that's my journey of traveling, and I just happened to like visit so many places that I had never imagined or thought about, and I'm very grateful and glad that I had this opportunity and to explore the world, to see cultures up close, to meet people from different places, and to see what is a common thread between the human experience across the world. So it's a privilege for sure, And along with that, I had a bit of interest in literature. And when you travel, you obviously you experience a lot which is different from your day-to-day experience, because you are in unfamiliar place, you are meeting new people, you're seeing things that you have not seen before. So that is a memorable part, which is like a departure from your daily routine, and you want to remember it. So
Exactly.
the motivation to write is just an act to remember, to not to forget, to record what you have experienced. And that's where I started recording some of my experiences, that like driven by that motivation. And having had an interest in literature, I think that also kind of connected. Like when you read a lot, you also want to write then.
True.
So that's how the writing journey started along with the traveling journey.
That's amazing. I know when you explained how you wanted to just start with some few destinations and then it unfolded to multiple destinations. You know, I believe traveling is like entering into someone else's cultural space when you travel. And many a times, travelers are culturally insensitive because they don't have a deep study. Like for example, in China, it is perceived as insulting if you tip someone in the restaurant. Now, what is the study that you go through, or what is the study that you recommend for travelers who visit multiple cities or countries out there?
I think like when we go for traveling, we do some study about where to stay, how to go from the airport to your
Exactly.
hotel,
That's how we all do.
how to go from point A to B, where to eat. Along with that, you can do a bit of study about the culture and practices of the countries as well. There's tons of information available. There are guides available now. It's the information is free on internet. There are pages like Wiki Voyage, Wiki Travel, TripAdvisor, all of those places. You can learn a lot about the destination before you go there, and about the culture as well. But I think, I mean, you can have some faux pas regarding the culture, because something may be normal in your culture but
Exactly.
not there. But that's like, I think mostly people are quite forgiving if you make an honest mistake and like you're not intending to offend someone. People do understand, like people in the host countries, they do understand that you are a visitor and a traveler. I mean, that's my experience mostly. It also comes with a mindset, like, you have to go with an open mindset and with an inherent appreciation for global cultures. And with that, even if you're not, obviously you're not expected to familiarize yourself with every single aspect of local cultures, but I think if you have the right mindset in terms of like no arrogance about where you come from,
Correct.
and act with humility, I don't think you will face much trouble.
True, true, true. Even if you show that bit amount of effort to learn that culture, it shows that for the resident or for the locals,
Yeah.
it shows that yes, this person has an intent of learning or appreciating.
Yeah, and then destinations are different. There are places which receive tourists all the year round, where
True.
seeing a foreigner is not something uncommon. Like in places like Istanbul or Paris, or like so many, even in Dubai, we see foreigners all the time. It's
True.
not an unusual thing. But then you can go to some destinations where a foreigner can be an anomaly, like where it may invite the curiosity of a lot of locals. So in a place where for like tourists do not visit so much, people are a lot more curious about the visitors, and
True.
they happen to be a lot more warm as well towards tourists and visitors. So, and they do really appreciate if you show a little bit of effort in terms of, like, I have seen, if you even know a few words in the local language
Yeah,
and you
yeah, yeah.
use them,
It does.
it just pleases the locals that the
True.
person is like is curious about their culture.
Exactly.
Obviously, if you do that in Paris or in in Istanbul, it may not have that kind of impact, because tourists are not an anomaly there. But yes, a little bit of. I think for me, this is the main driver, like to be curious about places, and
Yeah.
to be curious about places is not just visually how the buildings are there, but about how people speak, how people behave in their day-to-day lives, and language and culture are the inherent primary aspects of that.
True.
So if you don't have curiosity
Mm.
about local cultures and appreciation for that, I don't know what else could be the motivation to travel.
Exactly, exactly. I completely agree to your point that curiosity and a right mindset, then anywhere if you're traveling, might be you'll not face any trouble at all. They will welcome you and they will teach you as well as to how their culture is. Shoaib, traveling around the world is a dream for many people. You know, when I was a kid as well, I used to tell my mom, I'll do a world tour. You know, this world tour was a concept. But this dream comes with a reality check that money can be a hindrance as well. Now, I have seen many of the youth who get inspired by travel bloggers and they attempt to go on a bike ride or a car ride for multiple destinations around the world, but jeopardizing their career, jeopardizing their financial situations at the family back there. What is it that you recommend? And was there a situation in your life like this as well where money was a hindrance for travel and how did you overcome it? And what do you recommend for a generation now that, settle this or look into this aspect and then traveling is much simpler, please?
Of course, traveling costs money, and every dream, whether it's traveling or any dream you may have in life, comes with reality checks when you start pursuing that dream.
True.
That the same is true for traveling. And I would say, obviously, it's not a fundamental need to travel. Like, you have to secure the basics of your life first. You have to have an income stream. You have to think of your career. You have to be financially independent, and these are the primary things that you have to figure out first before you go before you think about traveling. But people come from different types of backgrounds, and I've seen the attitude to travel is varies from region to region. For example, people in South Asia, they would be very for us, because of the kind of region we belong to and the economic situation in those countries, our primary focus is to get a secure footing in our career.
True.
And like sort out those things first. A lot of people want to get married and have families and all of those
Maybe
before.
that's how our upbringing is also about.
Yes, so this is our cultural pressure that we face from our parents. Besides, our countries do not provide a safety or security net because we know that we have to do everything by ourselves. It's not like the government or the scholarships or things, or like the unemployment allowances that we can rely upon.
Correct.
Such limitations, such mental limitations, are not faced by a lot of travelers in Europe. I have seen, because they know that they can figure out, and there's like some safety nets available to them. So even if they go backpacking for 1 year and then come back, like if you have the fundamentals secured, then you don't stress too much about what will happen after that.
Okay.
So I see a bit of a more happy-go-lucky attitude in terms of travelers originating from certain places like Europe, for example, versus people from Asia. And that is there, but I think everyone decides about the time to take off from their careers based on their own economic and cultural situations. My recommendation is, I think, obviously there is thinking in the moment, like what you want to do in the moment, and thinking beyond that, like once you're done with that, what you're going to do afterwards. It's a very personal thing, and I think whatever works for anyone. But I think I wouldn't say to like sacrifice one for the other. Um, I would say like sometimes people go and they make travel their career as well. In terms of travel, let's say creating travel content or becoming a travel advisor or things like that. But career does not necessarily have to be at loggerheads with your passions. You can turn your passion into your career as well. Obviously, everything has a lot of practical steps and reality checks on the way,
Correct.
but it's a very personal decision to make.
That's a very nice point you mentioned that, traveling is not a necessity. If you have your basics in check, you can look for traveling as another opportunity to explore yourself. But yes, you need to look forward for what is important in your life and then make those decisions. Moving ahead, Shoaib, you have traveled roughly 70% of the world,
Probably.
probably, which is an extraordinary which people can think about in their lifetime. You carry so much stories to talk about of multiple cultures and everything. But when you look back at Shoaib years back who started traveling, how is the definition of traveling changed since then, and what is the definition of traveling now?
The definition of traveling, I don't think the definition per se has changed, but the experience has changed.
Okay.
Like it also is a factor of the times, because now the element of surprise reduces when you have traveled a lot. In the beginning, when you're traveling, that's why it's like the first love you have, you never forget it. The first destinations I went to, I never forget it because of the sense of wonder and the element of surprise that existed back then. And then when you have traveled a lot of places start to seem like you don't get surprised that
Is
much.
it?
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, when you have done traveling so much and you have been to the neighborhood, you kind of have a better understanding of what to expect.
Expect, yeah.
At the beginning, you don't know what to expect. And then, as I said earlier, that it's also a factor of time. For example, if I was traveling, let's say 20 years ago, it was a bit different in terms of the tools available to us to make travel easier.
True.
Now there are so many tools available. For example, you can speak into Google Translate and they will speak back to the person in another country in their language. So we didn't have these type of things 20 years ago. We didn't have Google Maps so advanced, which can, like, you can find your way around. And there's so many, like, we used to go and find a paper map from somewhere, and then now you put on Google how to go from point A to B. It can tell you exactly which bus to take, which tube or train to take, how many minutes of walk is there, what is the incline or decline in the walk. So it tells you pretty much everything.
Exactly.
Which has made travel, even though it has made it easier, but I think it has also taken a bit of fun out of it. Because things have become too easy and available to you on a platter. Like, you don't have to figure out so much. I miss those travel days a bit more as well, when you had to figure out things by yourself. And that also gives you an opportunity to interact with local cultures a bit more, because obviously when you are clueless in a place, you will ask around, right? But if you have everything available to you on your smartphone, you may not feel that much even of a need to speak to people. So that's how travel has changed a bit. I mean, travel per se is still traveling. You go out of the place where you live and you explore a new place. But with plenty of traveling, these things have changed. And that's why when I think about the travelers in the old times, like when none of these technologies existed, and I read about the travels of Ibn Battuta or Marco Polo, and I can't imagine or visualize or fathom like what kind of travel experience they would have had. Like, because, for example, imagine in Ibn Battuta is coming to see the pyramids of Giza, and he sees them for the very first time. He has never seen a picture of it. He has never understood the scale of it. Or he goes to the Great Wall of China or the Taj Mahal in India. Like, imagine the sense of wonder that those folks experienced that we don't. But this is not to say that we don't experience any sense of wonder, because even though I just spoke about Taj Mahal, I have seen like 1,000 pictures of it since I was growing up, and videos and pictures and everything. But since when I saw it in person, I was like gobsmacked, like, wow, how can such an extraordinarily beautiful thing be built? Not just built, imagined, perceived, built, and survived for these hundreds of years. So there is still that, but I think about how it used to be back in the day and how it is today.
So, continuing to the same question of yours, you mentioned about you travel and now there are multiple options where you can just put a destination from A to B and everything is been taken care, right? From your route to your walking distance, the local cuisine around there, restaurants around there, everything is taken care. How do you choose a place to visit? What are those fundamental parameters that you look for before deciding, you know what, this is a place which deserves my time? Because generally, people, what they do, they choose a place, the basis, the things to visit or places to visit, the cuisine, the places to go for shopping. What is Shoaib's parameters of deciding a place?
I am more interested in places where people live, like cities, villages, towns. I like nature as well, but I like to go back to places that are inhabited by locals.
Oh.
Um, I like archaeology and history as well, but I prefer more of those places where people live, like in the old towns and like where cities that have been lived through and still exist. Those are the places that fascinate me a lot more, where I can see the past and present at the same time.
Interesting.
And those are the kind of places I look for. I also want to combine wherever I go a mix of their urban culture and rural culture, if I can find it, and some aspects of history, like if there's like prehistoric sites or ruins from older civilizations. So these are my key themes. Then obviously I want to try a bit of local cuisine as well. And I like to stay somewhere close in the city centers or the town centers, where I can see the life as it starts early in the morning, like when people wake up or they go to work, or the janitors come and sweep the streets. And that morning time, I really, really enjoy that and appreciate that.
Wow.
When the shops are starting to open, the restaurants and cafes, they like start putting their things together. I really uh, enjoy how the day starts in any place, and that you can see obviously where people live, right? Um, so yeah, I would say I'm more focused towards people and cultures, less about natural destinations.
So more
Uh,
about natural destinations rather than man-made destinations.
Yeah, I mean, I love nature as well, but I like when I travel, for example, a lot of people go and like they relax at the beach
Uh-huh.
for several days. That's not for me. Or they go and they can find a lodge in a jungle and spend a few days there. I mean, that's amazing. You can see, you can hear birds singing in the morning, and you can see so much. But I like to come back to where people live.
True. That's where you get the stories. That's where you get the actual understanding of how this place has evolved. What were those folklores that they have? And that's where, as you mentioned, connecting the urban to the rural part of that country or a city makes the difference. That's where you come across with so much of stories to speak about. And while you were saying, I could visualize, the people sweeping the streets in the morning, people setting up their shops in the morning, everything. I could just visualize. It's amazing.
And just to add to your earlier point, I just thought, like you were saying about people, a lot of young people may have the desire or the passion to
Yeah,
travel, but how to go about it is the question, right?
correct.
Especially when you're figuring out what to do for your career and you're traveling, and money is also a consideration. So, money definitely is a consideration when you travel. Travel is not for free. But often I have seen that it's not money that stops people. It also is the coming out of the comfort zone that stops people. Like especially when it comes to going a bit of off the beaten track destinations. It takes a bit of like that. I would say a jump into the unknown to explore that. So it also takes that. It just doesn't take uh, the money bit. So there's, and I mean, any I think meaningful experience in life comes when you exit the comfort zone.
True. Very true. Very true. I remember Paulo Coelho once quoted this, that if you feel travel is dangerous, try routine. It's lethal.
Yeah, very true.
He just nailed it in that
Mm.
place, that
Mm.
some people feel, you're traveling. Are you sure? Are you safe over there? How are you going
Yeah.
to figure out?
Mm.
You're going to some distance place. You don't know the language.
Yeah.
But yeah, the statement makes sense.
And I've known like people who have traveled a lot more than me. I'm not. I joined traveler communities. There are so many people who have been to every single country in the world, and I'm still somewhere in the middle of that journey. But there are people who have like perfected it, and for them, like traveling or going to a new destination is like for us, like maybe walking from this room to the next room. But it comes with experience and time, and from time to time you also have to ask yourself like what are you doing it for? Is it like just to add new countries to your count, or are you getting something out of it?
Tell me something about this traveler community where you mentioned that you interact with them and you get to get information. Tell me
Yeah.
about this traveler community.
Yeah, there are several. Like there is a community on Facebook. It's called Every Passport Stamp, which is just for avid travelers who have been to, not like beginners. It's for people who talk about destinations that are not very frequently visited by general tourists. So they they discuss about the practical things there, like getting a tourist guide or getting transport and things like that.
Okay.
This is about places for which information is not that easily available.
Oh, interesting.
Then there are, when I, like in the beginning of my traveling journey, I was part of a community called Couch Surfing, where you're hosted by
You're saying
locals.
couch surfing.
Yeah, where you're hosted by locals.
Hmm.
And I also used to host travelers where when I lived in London or Scotland. So there also you get to like interact with so many travelers who are visiting your place, or when you're visiting their places, it's like a real cultural immersion experience. And
Like student explore, exchange
yeah,
program.
exactly. And then there are a lot of little groups there. Like for example, there are forums on TripAdvisor, or there are so many other forums available, country-specific ones.
Okay.
For example, when I'm going to a country, I would join like a forum of that country a few days in advance to understand the practicalities of that place. Like I was in Honduras about 2 months ago, and I joined the Honduras backpackers community. Like you just search for it, and you'll find something in which like people discuss the practical aspects of traveling in places which are
Okay.
not like from the most developed world, where you can find your way very easily, but not in the rest of the world, where you have to where you have to figure out your way. Besides, it's not just that, but it's also about safety. The level of safety is not consistent throughout the world. So it also, you can also find practical information about what to avoid, or what is the level of safety, or what is the level of health situation. For example, in some countries, yellow fever or malaria, these things are common. So
Exactly.
so there's tons of information available. You just have to look for it.
So what kind of a vaccine you should take
Yeah.
before going over there?
That's also important to know, because a lot of countries will not even let you in unless you have the right vaccinations. A
True.
lot of African countries, and some even in the Caribbean, they will only let you into the country if you have the yellow fever vaccine, for example.
Exactly.
I mean, now the world is very familiar with vaccines after the COVID experience, because
True. I agree.
vaccine was a requirement, but some of the vaccines were needed in certain countries even before all this COVID fiasco happened. So yeah, I mean, obviously you need to do a bit of research.
Shoaib, when you say that you go through all these forums and when you read about these forums and everything, those are live experiences of the previous travelers who have traveled.
Yeah.
Think of it from a perspective where people don't have access to this forum, okay, and they are about to travel to some places. Now, when they decide a place, there might be a preconceived notion based on the media, based on what the stories that they might have heard, stereotypes about that location, about those people. Any situation or any stereotype that you had about any particular country which got shattered?
I can't think of a specific one, but I think I always, like, even before I started traveling, I don't know, somehow I realized that we have to look at things objectively, or I used to like make an effort to see, like, to put myself in the other communities' shoes to see like why they think the way they think or why they do what they do. So I think what I have realized over time, not having stereotypes, everyone has biases and stereotypes. I cannot claim that I didn't have any, but not any conscious ones. Besides, one may have a lot of impressions about one's own culture, that these are the things unique to my culture. For example, I can say that my people or the place in Pakistan where I belong to, we are very hospitable people, we are very warm people, and this is unique to us. But when I go out and see that that's not necessarily unique to us, there are other cultures, other communities who are also value relationships so much, where the way what we call like the hallmarks of our culture, for example, we respect the elders and we are gentle to the youngsters. So then you find out, and it pleases me a lot when I see similar things in other cultures as well. So similarities in languages, for example, I see the way a letter or a numeral or something is pronounced, and I would find in a very remote corner of the world that they also uh, have the same word for the same item or letter or numeral. So these are the type of things that keep the element of surprise alive, and I don't I can't recall any specific biases. Not claiming that I didn't have any, but something that had shocked me in a sense that broke my biases or stereotypes. But anyway, they say that travel is the best thing for breaking or coming out of your stereotypical thinking. So it's the best medium. But still, travel without immersion into the local cultures will not do that. I see you see a lot of like famous people or politicians and big diplomats. They do travel a lot for their work, but they never get embedded into the local. So that's why it doesn't change them necessarily.
True.
And they will come back and play the same politics and still promote
Exactly.
promote biases and hatred, which like, and you wonder why travel hasn't changed them. It's because they don't travel in that way. You can still travel in a very isolated way. I've seen people travel in groups from their home countries and then just stick together with that group, and then they come back with the same group.
Exactly.
And I don't think that kind of travel can break your stereotypes much. But to it also depends on you whether you. Some people hold their stereotypes and biases very, very dear. They don't want to let go of them. So um, it goes back to our earlier questions, right? What your approach is to other cultures, and whether you go uh, with a degree of humility and a sense of curiosity to learn about other cultures with an open mind, or it's your mission it's your mission in life to prove that your culture is the best.
True.
Then travel won't change you then.
Very well said, Shoaib. You know, that if you carry those stereotypes with you in your mind wherever you travel, you might find them always with you. But if you go with an open mind and if you are willing to embed yourself in that culture with those people, you will come out with new experiences, with new observations.
Absolutely.
And then might be you can define the media that, you know what, this is not the truth. This is the real truth about it.
Yeah.
So well said, Shoaib.
Thank you.
You know, you traveled so many places across the world, but you chose to write about India and your experiences over there. What was the reason behind this special? There is a special reason behind this?
There is, because India is a special place because of our common history and because of how much, like growing up, I had heard about India and the very conflicting, different perceptions formed about India in my mind, and that had driven the curiosity and desire in me to go visit India. And then, but obviously, I didn't visit India to write a book about it. But the and how it enriched my travel experience, made me want to write about it when I came back, because I thought what I have experienced is so meaningful to me and perhaps to other people, if I document it. So initially, my motivation was just to record all those wonderful experiences I had had. Um, and I think a lot of the beauty is in the details. Like you can always remember the big things, like, okay, I went to 4 cities in India and I saw those places. But you don't remember the little conversations, the little experiences, the small little details you saw, the comments people made, the reactions you drew out of people. You don't remember that always, especially because after one travel, you travel again and again, and the newer experiences cloud the previous experiences. But I did not want that to happen, and I want to re-record it. And that's how I started writing about my experience in India. And I thought like it will be maybe a couple of pages I'll write, and that would be it. But I learned something about the writing process in itself as I picked up my pen and started writing about it, because memory is in a lot of ways contagious. Like you think of one thing and it reminds you of something else which you had forgotten about, and then that something else keeps reminding you of other things. So through the act of writing, I remembered things that I would have otherwise thought not worth writing about. And I kind of got into a flow when I started writing, and ended up like writing a big manuscript. And then I didn't know what to do with it. So then, after a couple of years, through various discussions, and it acquired the shape of this book that's in front of us now. But that was how it came about.
So 2017 you traveled to India.
Yes.
And when was this book published? I mean, the full-fledged.
This book was only published last year in 2025.
Interesting.
But I had written it back then, like I had written it around 2018, 2019, the first draft, and I had it lying with me. But I didn't know what to do with it, because it was, as I said, I had not written it with the objective of it being a book.
Correct.
I was just like journaling my experiences.
Correct. Like a travel log. You were
Yeah.
writing.
And I thought maybe the best, like it could perhaps be a series of articles for a newspaper. But it became too long to be a series and wasn't long enough to be a book. And then I kind of like put it aside and forgot about it for a couple of years, until I met a publisher just by coincidence in London, and I brought up this topic, and they showed interest, um, and then they reviewed the manuscript and they really liked it, and asked for like expanding it a bit. So then I went back and expanded the manuscript in terms of, because previously I was containing myself. I was like, no, it's too much, and like I need to reduce it because maybe I'll send it to a newspaper. But now that I had the book in my mind, then I revisited the manuscript and added those details in that I had missed out previously. And I also added some of my later experience, because in the book I also draw a lot of linkages between my hometown in Pakistan, Dera Ismail Khan, and parts of India, and people who had migrated from there, from my hometown to India during partition.
Okay.
So after the visit, I also went back to my hometown and looked at some of the places in my hometown with a completely different angle, like because I was informed more of the experiences that the previous inhabitants of my city had there. People who lived there, like the Hindus who had to migrate, who had to leave behind their lives, their houses, everything they had built with love and care and so dearly, they had to leave everything behind. And when I came back, I looked at those things, I think, with a lot more tenderness and appreciation. And I captured that experience in my book as well, because I thought it was kind of a closing of the loop, like where I started from, and I went to meet the people who had left from my hometown, and then I came back to my hometown and looked at the places, perhaps acquiring a tiny bit of their eyes, to see the place with their eyes. So that those are all the things that formed this book eventually.
What was the reaction by all those people who went through your book, who have interacted with you back in Pakistan, in India? And what was their reaction? Did they call you? Did they message you? What was the whole reaction?
The reaction broadly has been very positive. People in Pakistan and people from India as well. I don't know how much it has reached to those specific people from my hometown. But generally, for people who have actually read the book and went through it, they have really appreciated the writing and the topics I have touched upon, basically, and the way I have touched upon those topics with a very, like, what I have heard is like a fair lens of looking at either side. Uh, but I also received some negative feedback from people, but those are mostly the people who have not even read the book, who just have learned about the concept of the book or seen some of my podcasts and basically questioned my credentials to write this book. So obviously a lot of this friction does exist between the two countries, and we see manifestations of that everywhere. So some people like myself, I do appreciate the coming together of people who have been estranged, and to find bridges between the people and to find commonalities, because there's so much of heritage of both sides that has been left behind on the other side. But there are other people who want to further make permanent the divide that exists between us, and make the walls that we have built even taller to further restrict communication, connection, correspondence. So I've received both kind of feedbacks, but what I'm happy about is people who have read the book, they've only given me positive feedback.
Exactly. I like the concept that you merged your post travel and reflection to your hometown people as well. It's an amalgamation of not just your travel, but travel as well as your post travel interaction with people in Dera Ismail Khan, and then giving a beautiful lens and then writing it. It gives a sense that the book is all about, revisiting your history when things were together. And it's all about, I believe it's all about human perspective.
Yeah.
There is no Pakistani or an Indian looking at it. It's a human perspective.
I also dedicate the book because for me, I think one of the most painful experiences in life, when I look at anyway the human experience, even today, is when people are uprooted from their homes. I think this is one of the most painful human experience. We see it happening all the time. Even today, we are seeing it happen in different parts of the world. Um, like, it's just unfathomable how lives can be disrupted. Like, one day, when we build houses, we build families, we think this is where we are going to spend our lives, and all of a sudden overnight a war erupts or something happens, and you have to leave, and you have to leave everything behind, and you just pick up on one few things. You don't even have the time to decide what to pick and what to leave. I mean, I see that happening in Pakistan. It happened during partition. It's happening today when refugees are sent back. Like, people still remain refugees even if they have lived in that place for 40, 50 years or were born there and that's the only place they know. So for me, that's a very painful experience, and I want to study it, and that's also why I wanted to study this, like how people migrated over to that side, and so many migrated over to this side as well.
True.
And how people remember the place they left behind. In my travel, I also seek out migrant communities, especially from South Asia, that I find in very unlikely places, in places as far away as Latin America, for example, or in the farthest corners of Africa. And I love to ask them, like, what brought you here? Sometimes it's for economic reasons. Sometimes people are driven out because they are no longer feel safe in their home countries. Sometimes the opportunities become so restricted for them, they have to leave. Sometimes people are tricked into leaving. There's so many of these stories, and this type of migrant stories are very I think, close to my heart. This is the dedication of my book as well, and that's why I wanted. And I think between India and Pakistan, the migrant stories is one of the, I think, fun, like the basic salient chapter of our history together. So yeah.
You mentioned a few minutes back about a travelers community. Do these people also write some books, or is there a motivation amongst the community as well to spread experiences and reflections of their perspective for that particular region, so that the world becomes a better place, not just what the media and the political bureaucrats talk about, but the people who have been on ground, who have seen that culture. Is there some kind of a
Some of them
contribution?
do. I mean, obviously, writing is a niche interest. In this day and age, a lot of people record their experiences through the audiovisual medium rather than the written medium. But some of them do. But I also see, even if they do, the focus is not necessarily always on the exploration of places, but there's also an element of like recounting your own feat, that see, I have been to all the countries of the world, or I've visited every place twice, or like, so there's that element as well that takes a bit away from the genuine experience
Okay.
on the ground. But there are all sorts of content and available, and there are people who have this type of, like, not necessarily linked to these communities, but travel writing is a very old form of writing, and people have been doing it for millennia.
True.
And it continues to this day. Like, there's still a lot of travel writing available. It's also, I think, one of the key genres of literature that people are interested in.
Exactly. Let me come back to the same question once again. You traveled through India, and you had an experience that you reflected in your book coming back. Was there any assumption before you traveled to India about the place, about the people, about their behavior, and something that you experienced completely different? Was there something like situation like this?
Not really, because I have a lot of Indian friends, and I used to read about India a lot. So things were nothing surprised me drastically.
But friends and reading is different.
Yeah.
How about your experience? I mean, those strangers that you met out there,
Yeah.
how was it?
I think strangers that I met, I was received very differently in the current political environment. Uh, a bit of warmth that used to exist between the people of the two countries, I found it was a bit diminished now because of the current political climate and not just the politics, but the events that have happened between the two countries. So I found the warmth in some places was a bit diminished, and there was a bit of suspicion um, about me coming from Pakistan, like suspicion of my credentials as
How
a
did you
bona
give?
fide, genuine traveler,
Yeah.
or am I on a mission there to do something, to do some mischief? So that was a bit sad, but otherwise, I think generally people were. A lot of people spoke about how similar we are, that we can, like, I can go, and I did not travel through India, through all of India. India is a vast and huge country. I just went to 4 cities only in the northern India. But in those 4 cities, like, I could speak in the language that I speak in Pakistan, and I could recognize the way people behave as very similar to how it is back home. I could, like, the streets, the architecture, the sounds, a lot of this was very similar to how it is back home. Habits, people's food preferences, and all of those things are very common. Besides, what really would surprise me if I would come across people listening to Pakistani music in India,
True.
which was very common. I would come across it in a lot of cafes or restaurants. Um, in a lot of places I saw Pakistani clothes being advertised. Maybe things have changed now because trade has been further restricted. But in bookstores, I would find books by Pakistani authors. All of those things would kind of tell me that we have so many linkages. I know, like in the in Connaught Place in Delhi, I saw this a lot of women, perhaps Pashtun women, Afghan Pashtun women, like wearing
There's,
chadars and going
there's
out
a
for
community over there.
yes,
Big
going out
community.
for shopping, and I thought like as if I am in Peshawar, like because
Yeah.
that's what we see there. Besides, in the historical places, there are so many references. Like I went to the Red Fort in Delhi, and it has like a little market inside the Red Fort. It's called Chhatta Chowk, and I read about it that it was inspired by a covered market in Peshawar. There's a gate called Lahori Gate. There are restaurants and shops named after places in Pakistan because obviously so many people migrated. There's like Lahori Tikka House or the Multani cloth store are from even my own hometown. Like there's a school named after my hometown. There's a neighborhood called Derawal Town named after my hometown, uh, which has been preserved. Like these things have been preserved for it's been almost 8 decades since partition. What is this is heartening to see it's been preserved, but it's also creates a bit of anxiety with how long this will last. For example, in the current environment, whether because we see a lot of places being renamed or pressure for renaming places because of being the two enemy countries. So why should we have places named after the other side? But I think what we shared was continued for thousands of years, and the separation has been much shorter compared to that. And I hope we don't lose some of these bonds that still exist despite the tall walls that have been erected between the two countries. And if the movement of people becomes freer at some point, I think such bonds can be nurtured even further.
I believe this book will eventually create that bond much stronger, and it is needed. Indian culture and Pakistan culture is very much interlinked. They have so much commonality between them in terms of the cuisine, in terms of the clothing that we have, in terms of even cultures that we share, as you rightly said. And India has been a place where a lot of communities, refuge communities, now have their own settlements out there.
Yeah.
An Afghan community, there's a Jewish community over
Yeah.
there. And that's why it attracts a lot of tourists from around the world to see is it there that the culture is still preserved there.
Yeah. I mean, India historically, I think, has been a place of refuge. Like, there are like Assyrian Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians,
Portuguese people.
Portuguese. I mean, they were more colonizers who occupied places, but India has also given refuge to a lot of people
True.
Escaping persecution from where they came from. And that has what made India so beautiful and diverse through the centuries. And I hope it retains that character eventually to be a place that embraces all its history, because everything becomes part of your history, right?
True.
Regardless of what happens. And now I see at times there's an effort to revise or purge history, but you can't purge history because whatever happened, and you can't look at it from one lens. There's every story has a lot of complexities to it, but whatever the history was, like the ancient Indian history, it's the birthplace of several religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and it has embraced Muslims, Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, and all of them have formed India what it is today.
True.
And if India starts shedding some of those identities, I don't think it will remain that all-embracing India anymore. So that's what I believe, and I believe the same for all the other countries to do as well. Obviously, it's not just India's responsibility.
Exactly.
Pakistan and all those countries also have to embrace all aspects of their history, all the communities, all the people who had to leave this place to welcome them back. And because that's like the philosophy that I think we should be aiming for or promoting. Obviously, historically we have had division, and people are like for various reasons who wanted to promote that division. But I think any reconciliation can only happen if both sides do reflection about what they did wrong, rather than always blaming the other side is very, very easy. Not that the other side is blame free, but I think it starts from self-reflection, any effort towards reconciliation.
And I believe, you know what, Shoaib, that whatever is the current situation, we should educate or make our upcoming generation empathetic
Exactly.
to the cultures out there, irrespective of which culture you are. Being empathetic to other cultures will create a better society or a better world out there.
Yeah.
And might be what we are thinking now that should have happened, might be that will come true.
Yeah.
And it starts with first being empathetic to the cultures, to the food.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty about, you know, being in Dubai, that you get that culture exposure of many places over here, irrespective of where you come from.
Yeah.
But you get exposure to many places, many cuisine,
Yeah.
and celebration of all these festivals at one place. It makes you a diverse person, a person of open mindset. I believe this is what the, irrespective of whether you have boundaries or not, you should have cultural free access. The culture should flow from one boundary to other.
Absolutely. I mean, Dubai is a melting pot of people from all the cultures of the world, but it also, like, the way this culture has been created, this place has embraced people from all over the world and has allowed them to practice their faiths and their religions without any restrictions. It's an example for a lot of places, other places to follow. For example, a Hindu may go to their mandir, a Muslim can go to their mosque, a Shia can go to their Shia mosque. We have gurdwaras here, we have churches of all sorts of denomination here, and no one is going to be at the entrance of the church or a temple to ask you, why are you coming here?
Exactly.
So the fundamental responsibilities of the government of any place to create such an environment of safety and to make all the communities of that place feel equal in the eyes of the state. And I think from that sense, this place has done a great job.
Exactly. Exactly. Shoaib, if I may ask you about one thing that you would advise your younger version, if you could go back in time, what would you advise him?
I would say to be more fearless and to pursue my dreams without thinking so much about the ifs and buts.
Why do you say that? To be fearless. Were you not taking the decisions with all?
In hindsight,
confidence?
one can say that, what looks like a big decision back in the day, or if a decision where the cost of the decision looks like unbearable, but when you look back, it's like you figure out that you still did fine, because losing one opportunity is not the end of the world. There are other things that come along, that those other things that are invisible at that point of time, but they come along during your life journey, sometimes turn out to be better than the opportunity you were madly pursuing at the time. So generally, yeah, I would say to have this mindset of abundance. I would say, there's a lot more in store in the future than
I
what
like
we
that
can see
statement.
at the moment.
I like that statement. Can you repeat that, please?
I would say to look at things with a mindset of abundance. Future has a lot more in store for us than what is visible to us today.
It's amazing. Shoaib, what is that traveling has changed in you, in as a personality, as a perception, and everything that you would want to tell the world?
I think of myself now as a citizen of the world rather than a citizen of a specific
You
place.
should say that.
Obviously, I hold my identity dear, like where I come from and my people. But at the same time, I don't think of people as others, like people from other places. Like that's why like I think of India as my own country, Pakistan as my own country, Afghanistan as my own country, Iran as my own country. Like why? Obviously, there is people need identification and tribe, and everything is an extension of family, from community, city, state, and all of that. But I think I think a bit more in universal terms rather than
True. As a human perspective,
yeah.
rather than a Pakistani or an Indian per se. That's a very fair point, you know. I mean, this one statement changes everything that you then see about.
Yeah,
It's like
and
a lens. You remove that lens and you're seeing the world clear.
actually, I had once read a quote from, I think it was from Mahabharata, and that has stayed with me. And the quote was something like, sometimes I feel like the whole world belongs to me. And other times I feel that even my own being does not belong to me.
Wow. So nice. That actually is a nice statement. You know, this whole statement can change the perspective of people if they are reminded that again and again.
Yeah.
That the world is all about just like us humans, and you're meeting one human
Yeah.
to another place who is staying over there with a different language and everything.
Yeah. And I think in travel, this also adds another perspective, because I traveled to 114 countries, and initially when I started traveling, I was traveling with my Pakistani passport, which is one of the least favorable passports to travel with in the whole world, with all the restrictions that come to getting the visa and at immigration and all of that. So the first 86 countries I visited were much tougher to visit than when I got the British citizenship, and now travel is a lot more easier because I don't have to think of all those bureaucratic hurdles. But at the time, like I was sometimes asked, like, why do you carry on doing that, like to go through this entire difficult process every single time and facing rejections of visas and everything? And I used to say that I want to visit the world because I think I have the right to visit, because the world belongs to me as much as it belongs to anyone else.
Very nice.
And that was one thing that kept me going.
Interesting. Shoaib, now we enter into the rapid fire round question where whatever comes to your mind immediately just speak it out. Okay. A favorite book apart from your own book?
Chronicle of a Death Foretold
By
Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Amazing. You know, there is this statement which people say, things to do before you die. What would you recommend 3 places to visit before you die?
That I should
Like,
visit, or
3 places you would recommend for people before they die.
okay, I would say go to Japan, for its amazing culture, and like I think Japan has evolved in a separate vacuum than the rest of the world.
True.
Because
I heard about this from many people out there.
yes, I would say maybe go to somewhere in Scandinavia and see the Northern Lights.
Wow.
It's a wonderful experience. And maybe go on a safari in East Africa and see maybe the migration through the Serengeti and Masai Mara national parks of this wildebeest migration, or see the raw wildlife.
So my next question was the same. Like, is your travel completely planned or is it more spontaneous?
It's a mix. Sometimes it's planned, sometimes it's spontaneous. I love the spontaneous experiences a lot more, but sometimes due to a limitation of time, I have to plan it if I'm going away for the weekend only. But I'm traveling tonight on a one-way ticket, so I have not planned that yet. I'm going to Malawi. So I don't know much, and I've got that kind of I would say confidence with a lot of travel as well, that I know I'll figure it out. If I go there and I don't know where to go and where to stay and what places are there to see, I'll figure it out on the way or at the airport or when I arrive even. So I would say it's a mix.
It's a mix.
It's more spontaneous as I gain more and more experience.
True. What are the 3 accessories that you always carry in your bag when you're traveling?
In my backpack, accessories, I always carry a power bank.
Okay.
I carry sunglasses and sunscreen. And what else do I carry? I carry a raincoat most of the time, like a rain.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm going to a place where it rains.
Okay. Usually your backpacks involve how many bags
Oh,
if
I
you're traveling?
usually travel with one bag only.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
one bag that I can carry on my back, like a backpack.
Hmm.
Because traveling light is perhaps the key, the main fundamental advice I would give to anyone who likes to travel. We always find that we have packed in a lot more things than we need. So traveling light, even if I take a few sets of clothes with me, there's always places there to get for laundry and things like that.
True.
I don't necessarily have to have one t-shirt and trousers for every single day of my travel. Because it becomes a burden on you if you are like going around and always have to pack the bag or
True.
like many things to carry around. I like my hands to be free
Okay.
so that I can hold my smartphone, I can take pictures, and my other hand is free. Because when I travel, I am out and about from morning till night, and like carrying something in the beginning may feel like light and a small thing, but it's quickly becomes very cumbersome.
True.
So I don't carry any accessories with me like drones or big DSLR cameras. I just carry my smartphone camera.
Don't you feel like carrying souvenirs back from those countries?
I
Or
used to in the beginning. I used to carry souvenirs from the countries, but now I don't because I thought like since I am a kind of a nomad myself, and when you pack up your bags and go from like I've relocated many times in my life, and then it becomes too much to carry around. Besides, I thought the main memory is the experience itself and what I have captured in photos rather than in physical objects. So I do not pick up souvenirs from every single place I go to anymore.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Shoaib, what would be your advice to the people who are beginner travelers? You know that they are in the initial days of their career, you know, like 20s, 30s, first job, and who want to initiate a traveling just for a purpose of, you know, exploring the world. And since they are early in their careers as well, what would be your advice to them? Plus, for those sort of people who are in the mid segment of their career, and for those people who are retired, give me these three sections of people. What are your advices?
I think advice is not very different for all these different people. I mean, if you want to travel, I mean, the perfect time will not come to you.
Okay.
You just find the time. If you have a job, you have annual vacation, you have weekends, uh, you have the world in front of you. I mean, you would have in your mind which place you want to go to and figure out or save money or buy the like for the flight tickets and do the research. But there are ways to travel for cheaper than like to then for example having a luxury holiday or a fully all inclusive tours that we have sometimes.
Mhm.
So I mean people perhaps who are retired can go take those holidays. I would assume they would have earned some money and some savings that they can go and splurge and maybe take it slowly rather than like hopping around different destinations. But people in the early career or the mid career, I think they can perhaps do a lot of quick destination hopping if that's what motivates them. But it all comes down to what motivates you and what you desire. Um, it's doable. I mean,
It's doable.
I did not think I would visit so many countries, but it's doable. If you have a desire for it, just know that it's doable.
True.
You have to take the step to do it, though no one will do it for you.
Interesting. What since you travel, Shoaib, solo across the world, would you advise to the couples who are traveling? I mean, is there a change in overall things to carry or in the ideology? Because now you have a female with you to take care of as well. What is the difference over there? Any thoughts on that?
The main difference is like obviously you don't decide by yourself, so you have to take the you both would want to have the same experience. For example, if I go with my partner and she wants to spend the day at the beach, but I want to go to the market, so you always have to do that negotiation. So, but travel is also, they say, a great avenue for determining if you are compatible with someone, right? Because
Very
travel
nicely said.
brings out all the conflicts between people that they don't otherwise
The
discover.
subconscious behavior comes out.
Yeah. And compatibility of personalities
True.
and all of those things, they come out during travel. So if you can travel amicably with someone and you both enjoy the same thing, I think that can also be a precursor to a great partnership or companionship. Um, but otherwise, traveling with a companion, it has its pluses and minuses. Obviously, you make memories together and you have something to connect and talk about for a long, long time. But what I have noticed is sometimes it restricts your interaction with locals because you have a friend or a partner with you, so you'll obviously be absorbed in each other or talking to each other. So you may not have so many opportunities to talk to other people. But also, other people, if I'm walking alone, maybe someone local might be more comfortable to approach me versus if I'm traveling
Fair
with a
point.
friend or a partner.
Fair point.
Yeah.
True. That's great advice, Shoaib. And interesting talk, Shoaib. Thank you so much for everything that you spoke about, right from your mindset that you should carry and everything. So, guys, that was Shoaib Gandapur, and he spoke about everything regarding travel, about the career choices, and everything that you need to understand. He also mentioned about some places that you can go for before you want to even decide for a place. Read from those areas. But if in a nutshell, if I will tell you one thing, that traveling helps you enrich your soul. Job will fill your pockets, though, I understand, but traveling will enrich your soul. It will give you stories to speak about. It will broaden your perspective of life. So when you're traveling next time, any place, just bring that human out of yourself. Forget about which nationality you carry, forget about the culture that you carry, forget about everything that you have. Just bring the human out, and possibly the another human will reciprocate in a much better manner. And your traveling journey will be much smoother. The world is there to explore for you. Just go ahead and explore. Make sure that your family and your career or your businesses are well settled when you're traveling. And yes, that's all about it. So, with that, I would like to thank all of you, and do like and subscribe this podcast and this channel, because that motivates me to bring more authors. And stay tuned, because there are more authors, best selling authors coming your way. Until then, have a wonderful day. Keep smiling. Take care.